Chelsea end of season review. In today's video, we are going to be going over the season as a whole because I wanted to look back and sort of talk about it in sections is what I'm going to do in today's video, because I think a few times throughout this season I alluded to it. There was people talking about the good start, and then you had sort of the middle patch, and then the end of the season, which is, again, easy. Split that into three sections. But I do think that within that middle section, there is almost two subsections. So what I've got here today is technically four sections of the season, which we're going to split into, talk about the stats, talk about a few different things, about how Maresca's dealt with things, about how the season ended, which is obviously a massive part. And then I'm going to leave it to you guys in the comments to leave some questions, which I can get to over the weekend. And then from next week, it's going to be starting off with things like transfer content. And again, we'll probably do some live streams to talk about the season like as a whole. I might do some player review, not reviews, what do you call them? Like some player ratings and things. So let me know if there's anything that you want to see in terms of going through the entire squad and rating their season from A to whatever, like A to D, A to E. If you want me to rate the transfers, any of these things, just let me know what you want to see. But as well, any questions from this video, let me know. Let's start off with section one. Okay. And the section one is essentially from first day of the season all the way down to game week 16. So the 2-1 win against Brentford. Within that period, Chelsea played, what was it, 16 games. Won 10, drew 4, lost 2. The only two losses, of course, coming first day of the season against Manchester City, and then 2-1 against Liverpool, in a game where I genuinely think we was unlucky to not at least get a point in that game. I thought we was very, very good against Liverpool that day at Anfield as well. So that's an important factor. So those two losses out there. In this spell, I sort of referred to this, and I've got all these things written down from sort of, this is where I go back through all my season notes and I sort of compile it all into a document to read off to you guys, which is this is sort of the yo-yo phase for me, this section one, because within this section, there was a few more yo-yo games where Maresca was implementing his style of play and the shape was there, but the execution was a little bit different and it was a bit faster, which of course saw more goals and brilliant. Everybody enjoyed it. And we had players thriving, which was fun. But it did also leave some very open game states where things could have gone very wrong. For example, 6-2 against Wolves, but that was 2-2 at half time. It was a very yo-yo game in that first half, but then Chelsea came out second half, took control, and it was a little bit more controlled. And that, I think that was the theme. I think in these games, there was periods in the game where we sort of edged back into really chaotic football, like yo-yo, that's what I mean, like back and forth. 4-2 against Brighton, same thing. Cole Palmer, of course, having a ridiculous game in that game, and I think the game plan was very good against Brighton, but in terms of trying to attack behind them with the high line. The 1-1 against United, again, it wasn't like as bad in terms of back and forth yo-yo, but it was a poor performance, and a lot of it was to do with the tempo control. And then 4-3 against Tottenham, of course, two huge Cucurella mistakes, which didn't help that. But again, parts of that game, very, very back and forth, very yo-yo-esque. Now, some of these games within this sort of period were a little bit more controlled. You have the 3-0 against Villa is one to look towards, where it's probably one of my favourite games of the entire season, where it was the first time Caicedo inverted him from right back. You had Lavia starting in the pivot with Enzo, and you had a box midfield of Lavia, Caicedo, Enzo, and Palmer. That box gives so much control to the Chelsea team, and it really was an excellent performance. So that's something to sort of keep an eye on with that period of time. Now, in terms of positives from that time, again, the goals scored, but even in some of the games where, 2-1 against Leicester, the 2-1 against Newcastle was a good performance, but and the 3-0 against West Ham again, we sat off quite deep because we knew we could. So in a few of these games, even the Palace game, I thought we played well, but drew 1-1. The performances were getting better, but like I say, the execution wasn't 100%, and it was leading to it coming down to whether we could take our chances or not. And the Brentford game was a good example of that as well, in terms of we took the chances when we got them and secure. But game week 17, Everton, that's where obviously it went wrong the first time. So we're going to call this section 2A, because I think a lot of people would cause this whole section as one section, but we're gonna split this into two. Now, section 2A extends from the 22nd of December to the 3rd of Feb. So we're talking from the Everton game to the 2-1 win against West Ham. That's section 2A. Now, within this time frame, 2 wins, 3 draws, 3 losses. Very, very poor, okay? Dropping huge points. Obviously, the 3 in December at the back end was very, very poor, because I think against Palace and Bournemouth, you could even have a mini subsection there, because in both of those games, I actually think the game plan from Chelsea was strong and the performances were strong. But again, in those 2 games specifically, we went back into those early yo-yo phase games from phase 1, and especially against Palace and Bournemouth, where once we got ahead and once we was in a little bit of control, we allowed them to grow into the game far too much. We was trying to find that second goal on the counter attack. We was going too quickly, losing the ball and then giving them chances, and that is what sort of cost us in those games. So within this subsection, Maresca, this is the point where Maresca has just reaffirmed. I think he did it in the end of November, but then heading into the December time, he reaffirms it on the 24th of December, which was, of course, after the Everton draw, saying that we're not in a title race. Now, this is something that can be looked into, because I've been defending Maresca a lot this season tactically, and I stand by everything I've sort of defended him for tactically. And I think in terms of mindset and like his passion, I really like him for that, especially at the end of the season. I think he's shown a lot of it. But if you're going to call him out for one thing, I think this is the part that we're not in a title race, where you can have an idea as to whether you can have an opinion as to whether it hurt the team or not. And it could have stunted momentum, which caused a little bit of a sort of, didn't mean to do that, caused a little bit of an upset in that sort of phase of the season. But of course, as part of this, Wesley Fofana went down injured during that Section 1 against Aston Villa in that 3-0 win that I was talking about. And Romeo Lavia also missed the entire Section 2A from the 22nd of December to the 3rd of February. So having both of those players out, we spoke about the physicality they bring, the way that they sort of, especially Lavia, help Chelsea to sort of execute and, again, control the game, not to speed things up too quickly. Lavia is very good at controlling the tempo and slowing it down when it needs to be slowed down, and making sure that if teams are going to press Lavia, the only way that they're going to look to do it is they're going to get frustrated and they're going to jump onto him very aggressively, where he can then spin out of trouble and he can create something from it. So if Lavia speeds it up, it is usually the right time to speed it up. He very rarely speeds it up without being the right time. So that's a big thing. Of course, dropping out of second place within this time frame, and then the narrative started to shift. People start calling Maresca very stubborn. That's what they were seeing, because obviously the shape was the same, and we're still trying to do the same things. Like the inverted fullback is something that a lot of people sort of hate on, but it is very important to the way we play. And that's where the sort of stubborn nature came from, and the stubborn tag came from. Moving on to section 2B. So in this section, it's literally the 14th of February to the 3rd of April. So it's only 5 Premier League games, but it's 2 wins, 3 losses. So you've got, within that section, let me check, 14th of Feb. So the Brighton loss, which of course had the cup loss as well around the same time. The Aston Villa loss. The 2 wins against, again, the bottom 2 at the time. And then Arsenal loss. Now, in these games, the reason I have this as a different subsection is because not only were Wesley Fofana and Romeo Lavia still out, Fofana did manage to play against Arsenal, so he made it back for that one. But the other 2 were still out. Like, they were out for pretty much all of those games. But also, Jackson and Guiu and Madueke all go down injured in those games. Like, well, Jackson and Guiu go down against West Ham, the last game of Section 2A. And then Madueke goes down injured in, I think it was the Brighton game. So you lose all 3 of those, which is your main runners in attack, barring Neto, who can be a runner, but he hasn't really been that when Madueke, Jackson, and all that have been in the team. He's been a little bit more ball to feet, sort of collect and cross. That's been his game this season. So you lose a lot of your running power. And if anything, in this section, I think Maresca actually looked to adapt a lot. And this is where I think the stubborn tag, I think people got lazy with it, because I think because we were losing games with the Brighton and the Villa game, I think people got lazy and kept. That's why I wanted to split these 2 up, because I think they thought, oh, we're still losing, the bad form carries on. But Maresca did make changes in that. And it was just unfortunate, because again, in that, especially in the Villa game, I think the Brighton game we were poor, but I think we started the first 20 minutes against Brighton and it could have swung our way. Unfortunately, it didn't, and we capitulated. And I think that comes down to the experience of the squad. The character that we had at that time wasn't good enough. Again, we'd been on a bad run, so I think it was very easy for the heads to drop. But the Villa game, I think again, tactically, made some big changes. The wingers were coming much more narrow inside to run in behind to give us those runners, especially Neto. And it's something we look to do. And I thought we played very well in that game and we was unlucky not to at least get a point, but I think we could have won the game in terms of how we performed. Then, luckily, good 2 games come around the corner, but again, it was one of those ones where you're not going to get much for winning them. Like, you're not going to get much praise or much sort of attention from the fan base. It's just expected. So it was nice to just pick up 6 points in a relatively quiet manner and get that done. Arsenal game was poor, but again, I think the game plan was there. I think it was to defend and look to hit them with one on the break, try not to lose away at the Emirates. Can we take a point? If not, can we steal all 3? They score from a header from Marino from a corner. I don't think it was the worst performance. I think it was a dull performance. But again, I think when you have a few cards against you, I don't think it was the worst idea going into that game. I think we just struggled, especially in the attacking third, which is fair enough. Then, this is where the good sort of turnaround comes. Well, I say the good turnaround because, again, there's a little tiny blip in the middle with the 2 draws. But section 3 would be from Tottenham 1-0, so the 3rd of April to the 25th of May. And again, you can include in section 3, you can also include the win over Betis, the final win, which we'll talk about in a minute. So in the league, 6 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss. Of course, the 1 loss coming against Newcastle, where I actually think in the second half we played better with 10 men against them. I think we were the better team, and we was unlucky maybe not to even nick a point there and go 1-1, which would be an unbeaten run for the end of the season. So that's something to take. But hugely in this, obviously in this run, there's some huge games. Wins against Tottenham, Liverpool, Man United and Forest, which is conceded like tricky runs. The amount of clean sheets in this run, 0-0, clean sheet against Tottenham, clean sheet against Brentford, clean sheet against Everton, clean sheet against United, clean sheet against Forest. 5 clean sheets in that run. And then again, you've conceded 1 against Fulham, 1 against Liverpool, and a poor performance against Ipswich with the 2-2, conceding 2 goals. But again, good to rescue at least a point, but not good because we dropped 5 against Ipswich, and that was that would have been a huge talking point if we hadn't got top 4 this season or top 5. But again, big wins in that sort of late run in, and the defensive side really sort of came through, and that's where you've begun to see how the control can really help Chelsea, and where you can sort of limit and pick up those points in a sustainable manner, because it wasn't too frantic. We was controlling those games, and we was eventually finding the breakthrough, and we was limiting them to doing anything dangerous on the other end. Like, again, not anything dangerous, but we was limiting them to what they are used to. And it helped Chelsea. And again, we secure the top 4 spot on the last day with that win against Forest. We win those games, those tough games. We then win their first trophy under the ownership. Maresca's first trophy for Chelsea, the first trophy under the ownership for the men's team. 4-1 win against Betis. Again, 1-0 down at half time, come out second half, blow them out the water. So that last section, if anything, is as good, if not for me, better than section 1. Because a lot of people will go back to section 1 as to say how good we could be. But section 3 shows me so much more in terms of the control, that we can win ugly. We can also win in a good fashion. We really played well against Liverpool. Sort of dragged them apart in the build-up. Everything sort of went to plan. Against Tottenham, I was happy with that 1-0 performance as well. Could have been more. And it's those performances that show me how good this team can be with the right profiles on top of it, which is something I've always believed in anyway. So to end off with, let's go through a few stats to sort of just end off the video that have improved. So last season, Chelsea held more possession, 58.6, scored 2 goals per game with 1.96 XG, which, so all of those stats were better last season, because this season we've held 57.1% possession, 1.61 goals per 90 with 1.78 XG. So we're massively underscoring that XG compared to what we were last season. We were much closer to our XG in terms of, last season we was outscoring our XG. So that gives you a good sort of perception. On that note, this season, our shot conversion rate was 15.1%. So that was 11th in the league for shot conversion, but it was also the lowest of any team inside the top 8. So again, you're pulling yourself up tired. You're walking up tired with that. Because if you're missing your chances and you're not taking them, you're giving yourself more to do. So that's another factor to sort of take into account when we're talking about those stats. But these are the ones that I spoke about on Twitter, and I'm going to speak about them again, because this is not only what control gives you, but defense is so important. And so many people, even now, would say that the defensive unit needs a lot of sort of recruitment around it. People weren't happy with the centre-back pairing. People weren't happy with Robert Sanchez, of course. And again, a lot of mistakes which have caused us to concede goals that we shouldn't have conceded. But even still, the stats defensively. And also, to quickly, I missed this one. We take 15.5 shots under Maresca per game. We only took 14.1, playing in a much more chaotic, much more end-to-end system last season. So our shot volume has gone up. Just the accuracy that's mattered now. Now, in terms of goals against last season, 1.58 goals against from 1.53 XG against last season, and conceded 14.5 shots against us last season. Very, very poor in terms of conceding shots against us last season. 14.5 is very open. Compared to this season, 1.13 goals against. So that's dropped dramatically. 1.24 XG against. So we are actually keeping out a little bit more than we're letting on. But again, it's dropped dramatically. And 10.3 shots against. We're one of the best defences for limiting shots. I think we're fourth in that regard. Last season, we were the sixth most with 14.5. So that tells you the dramatic increase of how the controls helped to shift that narrative. Another thing to just mention, 12 set-piece goals scored this season, excluding pens, with the new set-piece coach. Again, I think we missed so many layers in terms of we don't really have huge attacking threats in terms of box threat. But we still managed to have a few nice routines where we've scored some big goals from them, so that's important. And if that's sort of where we're at, I would really like to hear what you think about each section. If you want to put a little comment in talking about each section and what you thought about the section, like for yourselves as a fan during the season, that would be brilliant. Any questions you've got about any of the sections in particular. But overall, I think a very successful season. We achieved both of our targets, and I think the recruitment now is going to be key to taking that up another level, letting Maresca evolve with the group. I think he's going to make some tweaks next season, as I kept trying to say in the tactical videos. I think he's going to add a few more sort of fluid movements and new patterns of play, which will now progress because the base is there. And I think above all, the mentality, the leadership, the coming of age at the end of the season was massive for this squad. And I really do think that this could be a turning point because of that. So let me know your thoughts on the season, any questions, all that good stuff. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like to support the channel because we're doing really well at the minute. I'm pushing for 5K as quickly as I can. I'm still like 800 away or something, but we're pushing as much as we can for that. Going to be doing a lot of transfer content. So all support, very appreciated. And I will see you guys next week when we delve into the transfer content, as I said.